Right now, though, I do want to get you right back into some of the big stories that we are covering on this Sunday. And this is coming in from Iran International English as an apparent threat from the chief of the Iranian army as funeral services continue for the former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, who died during the U.S. and Israeli joint strikes earlier on this year. It says Iranian Army Chief said on Sunday on the sidelines of Ali Khamenei's burial ceremony that he had told Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei that those behind the killing of the former Supreme Leader would not be left alone. It does not sound as though the comments went on, but again, that is a post from Iran International English. Now, at the same time, the New York Post saying that 3 sons of Khamenei appeared at the funeral, but the new Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is still absent, not showing up. So that's leading to a lot more speculation like we saw over the past several months. Right now, I want to discuss all of this here, the significance, what it all means. Let's bring in John Hanna, the former National Security Advisor to former Vice President Dick Cheney. He is now with GINSA. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us on this Sunday, John.
Well, thanks for having me, Josh. Great to be with you, and a belated Happy 4th.
Happy 4th. And first off, I wanted to start by talking to you about what we've learned here. The fact that Mojtaba Khamenei did not show up or has not shown up to his father's funeral. But before that, some of the comments that were made by Iran's chief of the army, it sounded as though that was pretty much a threat against the U.S.
Oh, yeah, and this is no question about it, Josh. The Iranians, and I imagine if the Supreme Leader is in fact alive and well, he lost his father, he lost other family members, perhaps his wife. So revenge is no doubt very much on their minds. I'd remind everybody that it's been years already that for the killing of the former IRGC Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani in 2021, that there are still a number of U.S. officials from the first Trump administration that have got death threats over their heads and continue to maintain their own security details for fear of possible Iranian assassination attempts. So this is very real, and I imagine we'll be living with it for some time.
And it's important to note, because I touched on this off the top and you touched on it a little there, but Mojtaba Khamenei has not been seen since his father was killed in that strike. There were reports from U.S. officials, different media outlets speaking with sources that Mojtaba had been tremendously disfigured or maybe even killed in the strike. It's all unclear. Now, what's important to note is he has not been seen. And on the same note, at this point, we don't actually know if he's alive. We haven't heard from him. So what do you make of that overall? Is that any surprise to not hear or see the new leader?
Well, it is surprising. I think a lot of us who, expected that he would show up for some part of this funeral procession, even if somewhat disfigured, to declare himself to have been kind of a living martyr for the cause, who has suffered terribly as a result of this American-Israeli war. The fact that he hasn't, I think, will only pour fuel on this fire. Where is Mojtaba? Is he alive? What's happened to him? Of course, as we've even heard in recent days about possible ongoing Israeli attempts to assassinate major Iranian regime figures, even while ceasefire negotiations were going on, possibly, there are real security concerns that these senior Iranian officials are operating under. But it does seem to strain credulity that we haven't even heard his voice, that they haven't been able to sneak out a tape recording of Mojtaba to verify some kind of proof of life. So it's a huge mystery. Hopefully, between the U.S. and other Western intelligence services, we can get a beat on: is he alive? Is he operating? Is he issuing orders? Who's really in charge of that system right now at this incredibly sensitive time while these major negotiations are going on?
And what you're looking at, normally we wouldn't show this, but this is some of the video that's coming in out of Iran as that days-long funeral service is underway for Ali Khamenei months after his death there. And you can see the crowds that have shown up. We're talking dozens upon dozens, hundreds upon hundreds of people that have flooded the streets. There's been threats that have been issued, not just from the Iranian Army Chief, but also we've heard from different folks out there, protesters, demonstrators who have said essentially some very nasty things about President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. As you look at this crowd here that's gathered in the street, what does that tell you, if anything?
I'm not sure how much it exactly tells me, Josh, about if we're talking about what's the level of real support for this Iranian regime amongst this population. Remember, this is a huge country approaching 100 million people at some point in the not too distant future. So if they're able to put 5, 10, 15 million people on the street of their supporters, that probably does match up with what most Western analysts have thought in recent years, that the regime probably maintains anywhere from 15 to 20% hardcore support of the population, while 80% is at some level of real deep disaffection with the regime's inability to actually deliver and improve on their lives and actually advance Iranian national interests, as opposed to this distorted ideological project they've been pursuing for almost 47 years to destroy Israel, evict the United States from the region, spend billions of dollars on this nuclear program that's been badly set back, and of course, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on these foreign proxies that they use to surround Israel, rather than spending it on the welfare of the suffering Iranian people.
During one of his America 250 speeches just a couple days ago, President Trump made it clear, essentially saying that the U.S. is pausing any kind of strikes there. During Khamenei's funeral, they're going to leave them with a week of no strikes, no action taking place, saying that they're going to be nice about it. So my question for you, is there any strategic reasoning behind that you could see as, you know, you're hearing those comments from President Trump?
Yeah, what I draw from it is, the president is not eager to return to major combat operations. His focus right now is on the midterms, on the U.S. and the global economy, and trying to get as much oil as possible out of the Strait of Hormuz in order to stabilize the international economy, and also that he wants to try and achieve that through some kind of negotiation and trying to create an atmosphere in which those negotiations, first and foremost on stabilizing Hormuz, stabilizing the situation in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah, but then eventually getting to the ultimate talks that these negotiations are supposed to be about, which is the final disposition of this, still existent and threatening Iranian nuclear program. Again, those negotiations haven't even yet really begun, and we're well past 2 weeks into this ceasefire now.
On that note, do you see a deal? We have this memorandum of understanding, but it's questionable as to who signed it, what happens next. Do you see a world where in the coming days, weeks, maybe even months, we do have some kind of, let's call it a deal between the U.S. and Iran? Is that something that is actually obtainable?
In theory, it's attainable. Obviously, 10, 11 years ago, we had the JCPOA nuclear deal under the Obama administration. So this is possible, but I would say, as a matter of fact, it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult, given the fact that the Iranians do feel that they're in a very, very strong position now in the wake of this war. Whether they're deluding themselves or not, that's the way they feel. And I think, as we saw in the Memorandum of Understanding, they intend to drive a extremely, extremely high bargain. So whether their maximalist demands and positions on Hormuz, on various elements of their nuclear program, on a refusal to deal with their missile program and their support of terrorist proxy armies across the region. Whether that can meet any kind of minimal threshold for the United States and what we need to advance our interests and the president needs in order to be able to argue that he's achieved a good deal here, a deal that is better than what President Obama achieved in 2015, is a very, very open question and is certainly not going to get resolved in the next 60 days. It's a long-term proposition. And all the while, the chances for miscalculation are very high around Hormuz, around the Lebanon conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. And there's always a chance that the Iranians will push too hard, be too demanding, and at some point in time, the president may feel he needs to return to a more kinetic kind of operation.
And right now, I want to pop this up on your screen. There's not really any audio, and you can't see him right now, but we had Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who was at this event speaking Hebrew, but it's over in Jerusalem, no English translation. However, you can see large crowds that have gathered here for this opening, and not really seeing Netanyahu anymore in this image. We might see him a little bit later, but there we go. And my question for you relates to Netanyahu's upcoming trip to the U.S. There's been no official date that's been set, but we know that Netanyahu has confirmed, as well as President Trump confirming, that the two are going to meet in D.C. What would be a successful meeting? Obviously, there's a lot to talk about, specifically when you talk about the situation between the U.S. and Iran and really Israel not having any sort of, I would say, part in those talks.
Yeah, the prime minister and the Israelis are obviously in a difficult position, having fought as full partners in this war. Operationally, their Air Force and other forces did an incredible job as a partner alongside the United States military. And now they're obviously on the outside looking in, trying to impact these negotiations going forward. There's no secret that they were concerned about the memorandum of understanding and what was contained in it, and to the extent it seemed to be negotiated largely on Iranian terms. So they're looking forward. They want to obviously impact anything that happens in these final nuclear negotiations. I'll think the prime minister will want to come to a common understanding with the president about what our red lines are in these nuclear negotiations. And then separately from that, of most immediate, imminent, urgent concern to the Israelis is to reach a common understanding on the fighting in Lebanon, what Israel will be able to do to maintain its freedom of action when its forces and its populations in northern Israel come under attack from Hezbollah. The Iranians, obviously, through the Memorandum of Understanding, are going to press very hard for Israeli forces not only to cease all fire, even when provoked by Hezbollah, but to actually withdraw entirely from Lebanon before we have an understanding of what's going to happen with Hezbollah's arms. Are they going to be disarmed by the Lebanese government and the Lebanese armed forces? The Iranians have one position that they're pushing very, very hard to get the Israelis out of Lebanon and have Hezbollah survive, while obviously Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to be able to ensure that his populations in northern Israel are going to be secure before he pulls out of Lebanon. And I think there's been some uncertainty inside the U.S. government about what exactly our position is on Lebanon, how much we want to allow the Iranians to have some kind of influence and voice inside of Lebanon and what happens there in these negotiations. And so I think the prime minister's got a very urgent interest in order to protect his own people, that he has an understanding with the president about what the Israeli armed forces are going to be able to do inside of Lebanon going forward.
John Hanna, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Obviously, we covered a lot of ground, but anything that we missed, anything that you want to make sure to mention before I let you go?
No, I think we did a good job of covering things, Josh. The one thing I would say is, as tough as it's going to be, I do hope we get to something on these nuclear negotiations, at least the disposition of Iran's highly enriched uranium, which is still there. It still exists. There's a chance the Iranians could get access to that material, and somewhere secretly in a fairly small room, have enough capability left to turn that into a material for a nuclear weapon. They've certainly got added incentive now in the wake of this war, having been attacked, not trusting the United States, that they could try and make some secret dash to the bomb. And I do think it's important that we continue to push, at least for that part of their program, that we get not only eyes on it through international inspectors, but that we secure that material and hopefully get it out of the country, and really remove that threat that continues to hang over the world.
John Hanna, thank you so much, with JINSA, of course, and former National Security Advisor for Vice President Dick Cheney. Thank you again for being here with us and helping to break it down. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. Good day.